Welcome. I'm here with the international guitar builder, Bill Comins. Bill?
Hey, thanks,
Great.
Bob.
You're very welcome.
Thanks.
Very welcome.
I call you Bob, right?
No. Yes. So when somebody walks into a guitar store and they're looking at guitars, they tend to overlook all that goes into building a guitar. I take it for granted, but it's a real art. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it's interesting, you know, you say music stores. When I was a kid, you could buy, I don't know, like a Fender Stratocaster. What were they, $300, $500, something like that. You can go into a music store today and you can still buy a Fender Stratocaster for that kind of money. And of course, it's because it's made either in China or somewhere else like that. Not the American ones, but you can still get a similar, a guitar of similar quality for that price. And I think, you know, it does make us forget what goes into it, you know, because I think it can make us take it for granted a little bit that, you know, it's just a guitar, whereas, you know, to really make a guitar well, it's a musical instrument. And, of course, you can do it on all different levels, but, you know, the level you'd see in a music store is not necessarily, you know, what luthiers like myself do. But I think until you really begin to investigate guitars, you don't fully appreciate what goes into them and how great they can really be.
It's funny you mentioned about the money aspect of it, because I've seen the same back in the 70s. When I would buy guitars, they would be $250, $300, and you can still buy the same guitar for the same price.
It's kind of weird, yeah.
But yet you have this wide range as well. You can get guitars for what's probably the highest priced guitar?
Oh, I mean, you know, I was involved in that Zyler project. They were asking $100,000 for that guitar.
For one guitar.
For one guitar, that's right.
Handmade.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah. You know, some of what goes into the price at that point, it's beyond a guitar. It's art, and it's, you know, who's involved in the project, whatever.
Right.
But yeah, you really can, and it's like high-end audio. You know, if you can buy a stereo very inexpensively at the store, but you could also buy, you know, a really nice high-fidelity system, and sometimes that huge amount of difference you pay in price really only reflects, you know, it's definitely better. You can still hear music on either one, and it sounds pretty good, but you know, you're paying a lot for that high fidelity.
Right.
The case.
Great. Now, let's go to where Bill builds his guitars in his workshop and see how it's done.
Okay.
Here we have a piece of European spruce. It's well seasoned and properly dried. It's quarter sawn. You can see the growth rings running perpendicular to the flat surfaces. It begins as a wedge, split from the tree with the growth rings oriented this way. The wedge is then sawn into two halves, creating a book match. Here I'm running the two pieces over the joiner, and I'll glue them together to form the top. Occasionally I'll scribble some pencil lines on the stock just to show me where the knives are cutting as I run it over the joiner. Here is a small variation to the grain pattern, what I like to call a beauty mark. Occasionally they appear to varying degrees. In this case, it looks like it'll clear the finished profile. Next, I'll surface the stock through a planer to a dimension of 1 inch thick. This will leave a flat peak with plenty of room to carve a nice full arch. We'll true the edges to give us a perfect gluing surface. With this square, I'm ensuring that the fence is perpendicular or exactly 90 degrees to the table. Here is a clear view of the stock running over the joiner blades. The machine needs to be aligned perfectly for an optimum glue joint. By aligning the two halves together, and holding the pieces up to a light, we can ensure there are no gaps across the entire length of the glue joint. And here's our glue. Before proceeding, we'll double check our glue joint by dry clamping. Everything looks great, we'll apply the glue. We don't need too much on there. To equalize the pressure, I'll place equally spaced bar clamps on either side of the stock, and the 2 cam clamps on the ends will help keep the stock flat. Clean up the squeeze out and let it dry. In the meantime, I'll prepare maple stock in the same fashion for the back plate. Over the years, I've used a number of methods to rough carve my top and back plates. Everything from hand planes to handheld power carvers, manual and automated pantograph carvers, and finally, this CNC machine. CNC stands for Computer Numerical Control. To use this machine, parts are rendered in computer-aided design software. This relatively small machine helps with a number of operations in my shop and allows for a higher degree of productivity, accuracy, and consistency. In this application, the machine takes a fair amount of what I call grunt work out of the process and allows me to focus more on the finer points of working the wood into a musical instrument. The outside of the arch is carved first, and then the inside. Again, this machine is only used for rough carving. The final dimensioning and refining for sensitivity will be executed later by hand. As the machine is running, I'll be in another room working on something else. While the stock is on the table, we'll flip it over again, switch to a 1/8 inch spiral bit, and route the sound hole profiles. This is one of my variations of a traditional F-hole design. The sound holes will also be detailed by hand at a later point. Very nice. Here, I'll pencil out the profile, then take it to the bandsaw. The next step is a preliminary sanding. Keep that sander moving to retain the subtle graduation of the arch. To locate the positioning of the bracing, I'll begin by placing a few marks on the inside of the top. I'll mark the center line, the approximate location of the bridge, and spacing of the bridge posts. Most often I use a traditional X-braced pattern. I'll position the first rough sawn brace and mark the endpoints. And the other. Bracing the top is one area of the building process that allows for a fair degree of tonal manipulation. Therefore, a good amount of diligence and patience is required. It's very critical that the brace is made perfectly with the guitar top. The top, or soundboard, is supported by the bracing as it resists the downward pressure of the strings. The braces also help distribute the energy of the strings across the soundboard. I use strips of carbon paper to make the gluing surface of the brace to the top. The paper is placed carbon side up between the plate and the brace. Drawing the paper forward will leave carbon marks on the areas of the brace that are making contact. Shaving away these marks will bring the entire gluing surface of the brace closer to a perfect fit. Each successive pass gets us a little closer. It helps to keep a sharp edge. The process is a bit time-consuming, but once you get a flow going, the work can be highly satisfying. Eventually, we'll switch to a small rasp. I'll finish fitting this brace and fit the other. Then I'll mark the points where they intersect, notch them out carefully, and glue the braces to the top. When the glue is dried, I'll return to them for final shaping.
Now, that doesn't look as easy as it really is. It's a real art and a skill.
Did it look easy?
Uh,
Been doing it for a while.
Yeah.
You know what, like anything, you just get better and better at something. I mean, you know, it certainly isn't brain surgery, but it's, you know, it's an art. And I think you'll see in the second half of the video where it becomes more of an art. I get into some of the unique things that everybody can bring to a guitar. This is first part of the video is a little bit more nuts and bolts. You know, it's just some basic woodworking stuff and how it begins to become a guitar.
Right. Tell me about the process. Somebody wants to buy a guitar, and they contact you.
Right. Usually, you know, they'll call me or email me, or I'll see them at a show, a guitar show or something. And usually, we hammer out some initial specifications. You know, I have some basic models at the website. Some of them are more etched in stone than others, but there's always room for customizing a little bit, you know, and that's why people will come to someone like me. You know, they'll tell me what they're interested in, how they play, how they intend to use it, you know, give me an idea of what size guitar, their stature, their hand size, things like that. And we'll print up a spec sheet based on our correspondence. You know, sometimes it's done in person, mostly over the phone. Sometimes they have a favorite guitar already. They want me to match some things like scale length or nut width and things like that. And then I take a deposit and work begins. And, you know, it depends on my schedule. It fluctuates anywhere from as little as 6 months to up to 4 years it's been. It can be all over the map. Most often it's been 1 year to 2 years is the wait for a custom guitar. And after we hammer everything out, I get to work. And what I like to do at first is prepare the stock, get it, for example, neck stock. What I like to do is rough cut it, just maple has a tendency to want to move a little after it's cut, so I kind of work it in stages. I'll cut some, let it sit for a while, cut it again, let it sit, and when I'm all ready, I'll true it up, and I know it's done what it's going to do, and it's going to be nice and stable. So I like to do some things early on in the process, and then when we get toward the end of that wait period, that's when a lot of it comes together fast.
Okay, let's listen to you playing a guitar you built for yourself,
Okay.
which is probably about the only one you own right now.
Yeah,
right?
they don't stay around very long, but this one I decided I'm going to really try to keep.
Okay.
Yeah.
It sounds great. You really have a unique style when you play.
Yeah, unique. Thanks.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't use a pick?
You know, I do use a pick. It's just I got into this, when I used to teach guitar, I always had a pencil in my hand, and I never had a pick, and I just got into, somehow I worked out this technique, and I still use a pick for a lot of things, but for solo playing, for chord melody and things like that, I really like the sound of fingers. I also like them on the arch tops on the jazz guitars. It's just a rounder sound. Yeah. I can't play quite as fast with my fingers, but I just...
It's like a Joe Pass.
Yeah, Joe was great with that. Yeah, well, yeah. Thanks for comparing me to
but
both those guys.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it sounded great. Now you're playing a guitar you built, and that model's a Lear.
That's the Learist model.
Learist.
Yeah. And you know, I named it that because I feel like it's a. You know, I've been building the jazz guitars, the arch tops, the acoustic arch tops for so long, and they're great because they have the spruce soundboard, and it's got that woody sound, you know, a nice acoustic voice. But when I started, people talked me into building these solid bodies. For years, I was a little bit resistant, but, you know, I always played solid bodies. So when I got back into it, I built this guitar, was really happy with it. I realized I was able to do all these things with it that You know, you can sort of do on an arch top, but, you know, solid bodies are neat in their own way. You really have a lot more sustain you're working with. And, you know, generally I play a solid body. Most people do with lighter strings than an arch top. So there's a lot more nuanced in a lot more nuance in the attack and just the dynamic level of how you can play. You don't have to worry about making an acoustic instrument speak. You can be really, you know, quiet, and then you can hit it kind of hard, get some spank out of it. So I called it the Lyrist because I just think it helps you express yourself lyrically.
Yeah, that's a great name. Now, this also is a Lyrist.
Yes.
And this particular guitar, which I'm proud to say is mine, and I waited, I guess, a year for this.
Yeah, you probably waited a long time.
It was worth,
too long.
No, it was worth every minute I had to wait. Hand painted by a former rock star, Annie Haslam.
That's right.
Who is quite an artist
Beautiful.
today.
Yeah, she did a great job.
Yeah, she's a world-renowned artist, and I just love it. It's just a wonderful guitar.
Yeah, she's a very nice lady too. You know, I know you're friends with her, and I'm friends with her.
Yeah, yeah, and that counts. It really does.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want a mean person building your guitars.
It would show. It would show. You could see the love she put into it.
Right. It would come out spiritually in some way or another. But yeah, you sound great when you play. Who are some of your influences?
Oh gosh, you know, I don't know. I have to say, everybody. I really don't have favorite guitar players. In fact, I don't even think of influences as necessarily being guitar players. In fact, some of them are, you know, vocalists. You know, if I name one, I have to name all of them. So I probably refuse to name anybody. But,
I realize. Yeah. Okay, let's go to you playing another selection on your lyricist? Lyrist.
Yeah, a lot of people say that.
Okay. And again, Bill, you sound great. Your website is
CominsGuitars.com.
C-O-M-I-N-S.
That's right.
Guitars.com.
Guitars.
Somebody had Comins.
Plural, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
plural. Okay. And on that, you have your biography, and you speak about when you started playing guitar, how it was so boring, but yet you stayed with it anyway, right?
It wasn't boring for long, but there are some method books that I make mention to, one in particular that, you know, it's a good way to learn the first notes on a guitar, but man, was it boring.
Yeah.
And, you know,
It
guitar
turns
players are not known for being
Turns a
great
lot
readers.
of people away. It really does.
I think it can, yeah. And then when I was certainly tried to be sensitive to that when I was teaching, although I still used it because it's a good book.
Yeah. But you stayed with it.
Oh, I stayed with it. I'm still with it, yeah.
And you took lessons along the way, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I eventually studied in college. I was a jazz guitar major, and I played for years. I just it's hard to serve two masters. So the building takes quite a bit of time. I'm in the shop long hours, so there isn't so much time to put into the playing as I once had. But that is what it is. I am finding more and more time now to practice, though.
Yeah, but the building is your income.
Of course,
basically.
yeah. Well, being able to play and $8 will get you a cup of coffee anymore.
And I know you're primarily self-taught, and you also build violins too, or have, right?
I actually never built violins. I worked on violins for years, repairing violins. It's another world. It really is. They might as well be tubas. I mean, they're string instruments, and I learned a lot that I can carry over into the guitar world, but I don't speak the language that violin players speak, so I'm more comfortable in the guitar world.
Right, you really have to be in your own pond.
I think so. I mean, I really understand guitar. I live it. But as much as I love violins, I listen to classical music, but I'm not part of that world.
Right. Or bluegrass, or
yeah,
whatever.
that either.
Right. Do you build flat tops as well?
I do have a model. It's called the Woodland model. It's a flat top with a carved back. So I'm bringing some of the arch top into the flat top realm, and because of the flat top, it's got a bigger bottom end. People who play acoustic flat-top guitars are looking for that big bottom end. So it has that, but it also has some of the articulation of a jazz guitar because it's got the carved back. The notes are a little bit more focused, and you can hear the voice leading more in a chord melody type situation.
Hey, Bill, it was my honor to have you on.
Oh,
Thank you
for the
so
opportunity,
much.
Bob.
Anytime, Bill.
Thanks.